were safe, and Stanley was now the proud owner of a dog that ate better than he did. Chapter 3: The Coward and the Hero. The Regal Beagle was the local watering hole, a place where the beer was cold and the wood paneling was a testament to the aesthetic failures of the 70s. It was here that Jack Tripper faced his greatest crisis of masculinity. It started with a bully at large, muscular man who took an immediate and unnecessary dislike to Jack's presence. "Buy you a drink, honey?" the man asked, leaning over Jeanne. "No thanks," Jeanne said firmly. "Why don't you take a walk?" Jack added, trying to sound tougher than he felt. The man turned on Jack, eyes narrowing. "You want to say that again?" "Runt." Jack didn't say it again. In fact, he sat down very quickly and became very interested in his shoelaces. The walk back to the apartment was a somber one. Jack felt the weight of his own perceived cowardice. "I'm yellow," he moaned. "I've got chicken in my blood. Even the kids at school knew it. I put fat Kenny Jensen through college with the nickels I gave him to not hit me." Jeanne and Chrissy tried to comfort him. "Fighting is uncivilized. Jack, you did the right thing by avoiding a scene." But the universe wasn't done with Jack. The next night, they returned to the pub. Stanley Roper was there too, nursing a toothache and a brandy. "Agony, Helen." "I'm in agony," Stanley groaned. The bully returned. He began insulting the girls again, and this time, he turned his attention to Stanley. "What are you looking at?" "Pop," the bully sneered. Something snapped in Jack. It wasn't bravery. Exactly, it was more like a temporary suspension of common sense. He stood up. "You owe these people an apology," Jack said, his voice cracking only slightly. The bully laughed. "Or what?" Or, Jack looked around. He saw the way Jeanne and Chrissy were looking at him. He saw Stanley cowering. "Or I'll knock your block off." Miraculously, the bully backed down. Maybe it was the sheer insanity in Jack's eyes. Maybe it was the lie Jeanne whispered about Jack having a steel plate in his head from a war injury. Whatever it was, the bully left. Jack was a hero. For 20 minutes, he strutted around the apartment like a prize fighter. "I was fantastic, wasn't I?" he asked, shadowboxing in the living room. "You were very brave, Jack," Jeanne said, smiling. "Even if you did look like you were about to faint the whole time." Chapter 4: The Case of the Missing Rent. The final act of the month was a thriller, or at least a very loud drama. $300. That was the magic number. The rent money. I left it in a white envelope on the shelf, Chrissy said, her voice trembling, under the radio. But the radio was gone, and so was the envelope. "We've been robbed," Jeanne cried. The door was unlocked. "Jack, you left the door unlocked." "I didn't. You left it unlocked." The police arrived in the form of an officer who had seen too many fake burglaries to care about 3 kids in Santa Monica. No signs of forced entry, the officer noted. "Board, You leave a key under the mat? Well, yes, but, and you left $300 in an envelope marked rent just lying around. The officer looked at them with pity. Nobody's that stupid. We are, Jack insisted. As the threat of eviction loomed, the trio scrambled to find the money. Jack went to his college's financial aid department, concocting a story about two weak girls depending on him. You live with two girls? The administrator asked. His interest suddenly piqued. In the same apartment? It's the 70s. Jack pleaded. But I'm a hardship case. My father. Your father earns over $6,000 a year. The administrator sighed, closing the file. You're not a hardship case. You're just disorganized. Desperate and facing a final notice from Stanley, they prepared to flee to the pub once more to hide. But Stanley caught them at the door. Hold it right there, Stanley shouted. Nobody's leaving. Mr. Roper, we can explain about the money. Jeanna started. What money? Stanley asked, looking confused. I came up to invite you to dinner. Helen's been nagging me to be neighborly. But the rent, Chrissy blurted out. The envelope under the radio. Stanley blinked. A look of realization washed over his face. Oh, that? Yeah. I came up to fix the sink yesterday while you were all out. I saw the envelope that said rent, so naturally, I took it. The room went silent. You took it? Jack asked, his voice rising an octave. You took the money and didn't leave a note. We called the police. We thought we were ripped off. I left a receipt. Stanley reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled yellow slip. See, right here in my book. I must have. Forgot to hand it to you. Stanley, Helen's voice boomed from the hallway. Are you bothering those kids again? I'm inviting them to dinner. Helen, keep your shirt on. The crisis was over. The rent was paid technically by the landlord himself. As they headed down to dinner, Jack looked at his roommates. You know, Jack whispered, life in this apartment is never going to be boring. Boring? Jonna laughed, adjusting her scarf. Jack, with you around, I'd settle for boring any day of the week. And downstairs, the puppy barked. Stanley complained about his teeth, and the golden California sun set on another day in the life of Three's Company. Chapter 5. The Vicar's Unholy Visit. The piece of apartment 201 was rarely long-lived. This time, the storm came in the form of a telegram. Chrissy's father, Reverend Snow, was coming to Santa Monica for a surprise inspection of his daughter's moral well-being. My father, Chrissy squealed, clutching the yellow slip of paper. He thinks I'm living in a girls' dormitory. Well, technically, we are 2/3 of a dormitory, Jonna offered, trying to be helpful while polishing a silver vase. Jack, who was currently experimenting with a flam that was threatening the ceiling tiles, froze. And what does he think I am? The resident ghost. He doesn't know you exist. Jack, Chrissy cried. If he finds out I'm living with a man, even a man who, you know, isn't interested, he'll drag me back to the rectory before you can say hallelujah. The plan was hatched in a flurry of panic. Jack would have to disappear. Or better yet, he would have to pretend to be someone else entirely. When the Reverend arrived at Towering Man with a